So today we're going to be looking at one of my all-time favorite games, Here I Stand from GMT, based on the Wars of Reformation. Box, back of the box, opening box. Today I'm going to try not to go over the rules that much because, in general, if you know how GMT does their card-driven war games, there's going to be nothing that new here. Also, there's just an absolute tons of rules for this game, as you can see by the rule book. This is the second printing. The first printing had actually gotten to ridiculous prices at one point. It was going for anywhere between from $80 to $150, and I was just so happy when they finally announced a reprinting of this. Just to go through the components, player cards for each player, depending on who's playing. The game has it's a 6-player game, but can be played with between 3 and 6 players. With the 3-player game, everybody takes a dual power. The 6-player game, you have the Protestants and the Pope, obviously. The Habsburgs, which include Spain, Austria, the Netherlands. The Ottomans, which contain Turkey. The French, which is obvious. The British, once again obvious. The beautiful components. I haven't punched my game yet because I don't know, I haven't gotten around to punching it. The map. The map is incredible. Oh, I love it when they're actually on thick. When they're actually mounted. And this map is one of my favorite maps. So as I was saying, the Ottomans, Habsburgs, technically Habsburgs being in the game of control here, Habsburgs, French, Habsburgs, British, Scotland, Britain forever, and Scotland for 1 second longer. So, now I'm just going to go over the base. Here's the victory points track. 25 victory points win. I'm going to try to go over some of the basics here. Sorry about that. So, as I was saying, let me just flash the components real quick. Do you stay? You have leaders, armies, naval leaders, naval ships, and so on, control tokens, leaders, and everything. Alright, so now, as I was saying with the map, which is the second print, I believe the first printing had just a regular flimsy GMT cardboard. This map is mounted, it's thick, it won't flow anywhere, and as I was saying before I was interrupted, thank you, battery is dying. Ottomans, the Habsburgs, more Habsburgs, the Pope, the French, more Habsburgs, English, and the Protestants. Now, the point of the game is to try to get 25 victory points. 25 victory points is one of the easiest ways to win. There's also domination, depending on how many keys you control. As you can see on the map, anything that's a square counts as a key, and they count towards your victory points. Depending on how many keys you control, also gives you how many cards you get. The cards all have events that you can play, or you can use them for operations, depending on how far you want to move troops and whatnot. Each card also has, each power has different ways of using the operations. Also, each power has one card that will always get back no matter what, and will always have at the start of the turn. For example, the Ottomans have a card that lets them build troops cheaper. The Pope has a card that lets them. The Pope has two cards that come back. The Habsburgs have a card that allows them to send their leader anywhere. France France has a card. England has a card that allows them to declare war or to work on their Henry's wife's chart. Each power also has different ways of gaining victory points. Now, of course, there's the keys, but for example, as the Protestants or as the Pope, it's not important to really get the keys. It's not as it is to try to convert as much as possible to your religious side. You do this through either debates, which you can call debate in each zone depending on the circumstances, and you have debaters which brings me to one of my favorite things about this game, is that if you're the Pope and you lose the debate, then your debater is just disgraced and he can't come back into the game. He's done. If you lose the debate by a certain amount, I should say. But if the Protestant loses the debate by a certain amount, then he's considered burned at the stake. Disgracing and burning debaters also gives a certain amount of victory points to either side, depending. Like I said, I'm trying not to get into too many of the rules here. The other big thing about each power is that when you're buying troops, you can either buy national troops or mercenaries. Mercenaries are half the price, but the mercenaries, there was a bunch of cards in the game that allow mercenaries to revolt. So you can go into battle with an advantage, and your opponent plays a card that allows all the mercenaries to switch sides, just as an example. Now, each player has different ways to get victory points. I'll start with the Ottomans. Obviously, the Ottomans are going to spend a lot of time fighting with Austria, trying to get into Italy if possible, but they can also spend points pirating in each and every sea zone as long as there's a port around. It's one of the things that makes the game interesting for the Habsburgs, because the Habsburgs not only have to have strength to make sure that the Ottomans don't attack, but they also have to spread out their naval power or combine their naval power, depending on what how the status is between the two nations. As I said, let's go with the Pope. Now, the Pope, the special way the Pope gets victory points is by spending. They can spend cards into. They can spend points into both. Into working on the St. Peter's Basilica, until they get 5 victory points, and then that's the max for that. They also get the Protestants get points for translating the Old Testament and the New Testament, and they also get, obviously they get points depending on how many places are converted to their side. The Habsburgs, French, and English all get victory points depending on how, if you see the map of the New World, you can send out explorers to try to explore, and if they are successful, that's how many VPs. You can also send out, it's especially true for the Habsburgs, can send out conquistadors, who can take out the Aztecs, the Mayas, or the Incas for a certain amount of victory points too. The Habsburgs are the best at it because their conquistadors actually have names. The English and they're also cheaper. The English and French aren't nearly as good as conquistadors, but they still have some good explorers. The French also have the ability to work on Versailles, which gives them up to 5 victory points. The English can get up to 5 victory points along with exploration. They can get 5 victory points depending on if a healthy Edward is born, which comes into range on a multiple level of areas, because since George can eventually die, since Henry can eventually die, if he dies and the heirs, if he dies, there's multiple heirs who can take over the throne, who will, for the most part, make it harder for the English to win. So the English really need to get Edward alive once again. So what ends up happening? I'm trying to get this all together. I'm trying not to be all over the place. So my apologies if this review comes out terrible. So basically, each power has separate ways to try to win the game. If you're playing with less than 6 players, then what normally happens is that the English and the Protestants, the Habsburgs and the Pope, and the Ottoman and the French all get combined. Personally, it's good. The 3-player, the 4-player games are good if that's what you can get. After a while, it just becomes annoying because it becomes a lot of jump on the leader where you'll be trying to, if you're in the lead and you're trying to do something, all of a sudden you have the 2 other players with 2 hands each trying to stop your every move. It just becomes a bit much. The other big thing is that the Protestants and the Protestants and the English tend to be a tad overpowered when working in unison, because the English get victory points for every spot, depending. I don't remember the exact rules, but for the more Protestant spaces in England, the better for the English too. The English get victory points. So in the end, most of the time, if it's just a lone Protestant player, they won't try to convert in England that much because it'll cost them the game, give the game to the English. But when they're both playing together, it becomes a pain. Now another big thing I hear a lot, is if we have a newbie, he was playing, just give him the Ottomans. I don't know. I don't recommend giving the Ottomans to a new player, because you need the Ottomans to be one of the counterweights to the Habsburgs. I always recommend giving a new player the English, because they're on an island by themselves. They're not going to lose militarily. I've rarely ever seen England invaded, and if they screw up, it's usually just themselves that screwed up. They're not helping any other player except maybe the French a little bit. Okay. So now I realize that I probably was all over the place. This review's probably making no sense, but to make it simple, it's the diplomacy. The diplomacy makes us tops. Trading cards with each other, making because certain events can only be played by certain powers. You can't it can't be beaten because each power is so different from one another. It's not like you're all playing the same thing. You're all playing towards different ends, all different objectives, all meeting at the same ends, which is trying to get 25 victory points. There's a varied amount of strategies for each one, which if you view my blog at paperstreetbrigade.com/blog, I have lists of all the most popular starting moves and some of the best strategies for each power for what the long term is trying to do. Obviously, it's tough. Wow, that is why I bought a AC adapter, which doesn't appear to work, because this is already the second time I've killed batteries today. Okay, so each power is different from one another. Thoroughly different. The game thoroughly plays different for each power, no matter, Now, as much as I absolutely love this game, I consider it one of the best. There's a lot of problems you have to consider. First off, the game can take forever. Even on wargameroom.com, which is a popular place to play this, which I have most of my plays on wargameroom.com, it can take sometimes up to 8 hours, 6 to 8 hours. 8 hours especially for a 6-player game. I've heard of plenty of people who have gone to 12 or 18-hour games when it's face-to-face with the dice rolling and everything else. So if you're going to play it and you want to give it a try, I'd recommend wargameroom.com. Stop by, give it a play, see how you do, see how you like it. If you can get, I would say, you'd really want 5 people. If you think you can get 5 people together to sit down, play this all day on a regular basis, maybe once a month, or if you have somewhere you can have it set up and just come and play it as you please, then go for it. But if you're not going to have a constant 6 people, if you're not going to constantly have up to 6 people, if you have 3 people who constantly want to play, that's fine. I'm just saying 6 because, one person can't play this week, one person can't play that week, however you work it out. If you're not going to have people who are going to sit around and play the game all day, then I really can't recommend buying it, because the third play, even with the 3-player, the 3-player kind of loses something with the diplomacy. Otherwise, like I said, if you can find the players to play it, it's great. If you can find the time to play it, it's great. The rules get a beating for being overly complicated. But once again, once you get used to the separate powers, the separate abilities of each, which the Habsburgs should always be saved for a veteran player. But once you get used to the different abilities of each, and once you learn the religious game, it plays just like any other GMT card-driven war game. Currently, Ed Beach, who created this, is also working on Virgin Queen as a follow-up. I just wanted to. There's also I wanted to break out the decks. I guess this is it. Yeah, so just in case, here's the deck, the 2-player special deck. Here's half of the deck, and here's the other half of the full deck, which, for example, the Janissaries card is a card that the Ottomans will always get back. Like I said, it's one of my favorite games. I bought it just because I played so much on Wargame Room, and I just love it so much I wanted to, support GMT. Beyond that, I mean, like I said, it's a great game. If you ever want to play this, give it a play with me. Usually wargameroom.com on Saturdays at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, which I think is -4 GMT. I'm not 100% sure, but swing by wargameroom.com, the Java chat, at 1 p.m. on just about any Saturday, and I'll be around. Especially make sure to be around this upcoming Saturday, which is this coming Saturday is the 4th or whatever. I'll be around. Let's see if we can play some game if you like this review. Once again, I mean, the components are absolutely great. Once again, from GMT, there's not a lot of problems with the game. It's just because it's a 6-player, because it relies so much on, because it relies so much of the good stuff is from diplomacy. I just can't recommend it if you're not going to have the players for it, unless you're playing obviously online. And hopefully I didn't confuse you at all with this review. It is probably one of the best games I've played. I think the only game I believe is better than this is Paths of Glory. So once again, I hope you enjoyed this review. Have a good day.